What a fascinating story. And just think, Abby would be out of work if Truett had given up, right? If you failed, are you a failure? So some of these quotes I have on the left. Failure isn't so bad if it doesn't attack the heart. Success is all right if it doesn't go to the head. Something we'll see at the end is success is never final. Failure is never fatal. Sometimes when we're winning, we feel like we're always going to win, right? Not the case. Sometimes when we fail, we think we're always going to fail. Not the case. We need to tell ourselves, I'm not a failure. I failed at something. There's a big difference, right? It's all how we see it. And then all great achievers, and we saw a few at the beginning, did we not? All great achievers are given multiple reasons to believe they are failures, but in spite of that, they persevere. So what do we need? What abilities do we need to fail forward? Achievers always bounce back. We saw that, right? We could call Honest Abe a bouncing ball, couldn't we? He always bounced back. Achievers see failure as temporary. They see them as isolated events. They keep their expectations realistic. They focus on their strengths. They vary their approaches to achievement. So if you keep hitting your nose on the wall, maybe take a step back and give it some consideration, right? Change your method. And then again, achievers always bounce back. You're too old to cry, but it hurts too much to laugh. I'd like to read you another passage, because these are pretty interesting, aren't they? Mm-hmm. All right, here we go. Wait till you hear this one. You go home and dazzle your parents on this one. Just about everyone has heard of the Wright brothers. Who were the Wright brothers?
Guys that invented the aircraft.
Thank you. The bicycle mechanics who pioneered manned motorized flight in the first part of the 20th century. The circumstances surrounding Orville and Wilbur Wright's first flight on December 17, 1903 make an interesting story. It's certainly a story that illustrates how to fail forward. But what you may not know is that prior to that day, the Wrights, unknowns, with no university education, were not leaders in aviation. Did you know that? Do you know who was the leader in aviation? I'm going to tell you why you don't know. His name was Dr. Samuel P. Langley. Anybody ever hear of Langley Air Force Base in Virginia? That's named after him, right? Mm-hmm. So the leader, like the head Bubba, the Steve Jobs of the time, Samuel P. Langley. He was a respected former professor of mathematics and astronomy who at the time was the director of the Smithsonian Institution. What a lot to do. Langley was an accomplished thinker, scientist, and inventor. He had published several important works on aerodynamics, and he possessed a vision of achieving manned flight. In fact, in the mid to late 1890s, he had done extensive experiments with large, unmanned plane models and had achieved a great deal of success. In 1898, Langley approached the U.S. War Department for funding to design and build an airplane to carry a man aloft. And the department gave him a commission of $50,000. And what was that? 1898, $50,000. That was like a lot of money, right? Back then. Langley went right to work. By 1901, he had successfully tested an unmanned, gasoline-powered, heavier-than-air craft. He was the first in history. And when he enlisted the aid of Charles Manley, an engineer who built a powerful new lightweight engine based on the designs of Stephen Balzar, his success seemed inevitable. On October 8, 1903, and forgive me for reading this, but it's just such a great story. Langley expected his years of work to come to fruition. As journalists, so October 1903, that's 2 months before the Wright brothers, right? 2 months before. As journalists and curious onlookers watched, Charles Manley wearing a court-lined jacket. That's awesome. Right? That's like a Keto Mikey thing. Court-lined jacket. Strode across the deck of a modified houseboat and climbed into the pilot's seat of the craft called the Great Aerodome. The full-size motorized device was perched atop a specially built catapult designed to initiate the aerodome's flight into the air. But when they attempted to launch, part of the aerodome got caught and the biplane was flung into 16 feet of water, a mere 50 yards from the boat. Criticisms of Langley were brutal. For example, this is what the New York Times said. The New York Times was wrong in 1903 and they're wrong in 2019. They write, the ridiculous fiasco which attended the attempt of the aerial navigation in the Langley flying machine was not unexpected. The flying machine, which will not really fly, might be evolved by the combined and continuous effort of mathematicians and mechanics from 1 to 10 million years from now. So the Times said, this is ridiculous. This will not happen in 10 million years. And Trump won't be president. No doubt the problem has its attractions for those it interests, but to ordinary men, it would seem as if the effort might be employed more profitably. They're saying the government's wasting their money. At first, Langley didn't let the failure or the accompanying criticism deter him. 8 weeks later, in early December, he and Manley were ready to attempt flight again. They had made numerous modifications to the aerodome, and once more Manley climbed into the cockpit from the houseboat's deck, ready to make history. But as before, disaster struck. This time, the cable supports to the wings snapped as the plane was launched. The craft caught again on the launch rail and it plunged into the river upside down. Manley nearly died. Again, the criticism was fierce. His great aerodome was called Langley's Folly, and Langley himself was accused of wasting public funds. The New York Times commented, "We hope that Professor Langley will not put his substantial greatness as a scientist in further peril by continuing to waste his time and money involved in further airship experiments." You know what happened next? He quits! He quits! And the two bike makers, without an education, launch! 2 years later, Langley suffers a stroke. A year after that, he dies. And today, while even young school children have heard of the Wright brothers, nobody knows who Langley was. How do you like that? Don't personalize failure. How close was Langley? There's something called the fear cycle. Fear, inaction, inexperience, and inability. Can anybody explain why that succession happens? Yes.
You're afraid to do things, so you don't do them, and then when you have to do something, you aren't experienced, that you can't do it.
Exactly. Way smarter than you look. Luke nailed it. When we have fear, that leads to inaction. Then we don't have experience. And then we have inaction, inability, because we don't have any experience, right? I'm a big advocate of Do Hard Things. That's what Do Hard Things is all about, the book Do Hard Things. If you haven't read it, read it. The result is self-pity, excuses, misused energy, and hopelessness. Do you think Langley had any hopelessness? I bet he did, right? George Bernard Shaw said, "A life spent in making mistakes is not only more honorable, but more useful than a life spent doing nothing."
I have a comment.
Yes.
One of the things that in today's society, we use the word mistakes for everything. Mistakes are not being inappropriate with the opposite sex and becoming pregnant beforehand. That's not a mistake, that's stupid. Hanging with people that do drugs, not a mistake, stupidity. So don't confuse mistakes with stupidity,
Right.
right? So, you know, you hear on the news a lot, oh, you know, he's 27, he drove drunk and killed a police officer on the side of the road. Rick knew a guy that happened to, his wife, right? You worked with the wife. And all of the news, oh, he was just a kid and he made a dumb mistake. That's not a mistake, that's absolute stupidity. Mistakes are, hey, I'm gonna try to build this hot rod out of, you know, a go-kart out of junk parts, and it doesn't work, that's a mistake, big deal. But don't confuse mistakes with stupidity.
You're never going to make good cakes unless you make some cakes,
I know,
right?
right?
You're not going to be a good
I'm
singer
intense.
in public if you don't get up and sing in front of people, right? It may not go perfect the first time, get up and do it again. Find the exit off the failure highway. So, let me read you a story. This story is called An Autobiography in 5 Short Chapters. Chapter 1. I walk down the street, there's a deep hole in the sidewalk, I fall in. I am lost, I am hopeless. It isn't my fault, it takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2. I walk down the same street, there is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it, I fall in again. Right? So even if we pretend it ain't there, we still fall in. I can't believe I'm in the same place. But it isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3. I walk down the same street, there is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit. But my eyes are open. I know where I am. It is my fault. I get out immediately. Chapter 4. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5. I walk down another street. A woman named Portia Nelson wrote that. So, common responses. We mess up, right? We mess up. Common responses are we blow up, right? We overreact. We cover up. We try to hide our mistake. Has anybody ever done that? We speed up. We think we just work harder and faster. We can overcome our mistake. One of those, if you're in a hole, stop digging, right? We back up. Sometimes we'll say something inappropriate. So what do we try to do? We try to explain it away instead of just going, I shouldn't have said that. I apologize. We try to back up. And the worst thing we can do is we give up. The appropriate response is to wake up. Go down a different street, right? Take responsibility and own it. This is, what do the commercials do? But wait, there's more. I'm going to give you a little extra. Anybody know what Massa and Maribeth are? I'm going to tell you, I own a timeshare there. It's in the between the Forks and the Red Sea there. So let me read you something from Exodus 17. The whole Israelite community set out from the desert of Sin. So the Israelites are on their journey. They're out of Egypt. They're traveling from place to place as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. So they quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." Moses replied, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to test?" But the people were thirsty for water there, and they grumbled against Moses. They said, "Why did you bring us out of Egypt?" This is the biggest whiny thing, isn't it? They were slaves! And they're going, "Why did you bring us out of Egypt to make us lie and our children's livestock die of thirst?" Is that just pathetic? Sounds like me. Then Moses cried out to the Lord, "What am I to do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me." So the Lord told Moses, "Go out in front of the people, take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff for which you struck the Nile, and go. I will stand there before you by the rock of Horeb, strike the rock, and water will come out for the people to drink." So Moses does this, and he calls the place Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled and because they tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord not amongst us?" Massah means testing. Meribah means quarreling. Why did you take us here? Like I said, I own a timeshare there. I go there about 14 days a year. You guys probably own part of the timeshare too. If you don't know what a timeshare is, it's a property that multiple people buy in. They get like 2 weeks there a year. I think if you're anything like me, maybe it's just me, I own a timeshare there. All right. No matter what happens to you, failure is an inside job.